Welcome to the Successful Encore Career Podcast, a podcast from Employment for Seniors. This episode being brought to you by Nationwide Insurance, Central Ohio Area Agency on Aging, and InnoSource. I'm Brett Johnson, longtime volunteer with Employment for Seniors, and with me is Carol Ventresca, Executive Director of Employment for Seniors.
How are you today, Brett? Great. We have another wonderful program. And for our listeners out there, we're probably honing in on number 100 here pretty soon. We got to take a number, figure out how many podcasts, but we have enjoyed what we're doing. We hope you have enjoyed what you're hearing. And as always, if you have ideas of podcasts, of topics that we haven't hit, we are always looking for new ideas and new programs and new speakers to join us on our podcast. Right. So if you have ideas, please email me at podcast@employseniors.org. So, Brett, although you are one of my favorite people, another one of my favorite people is with us today. Dean Pulliam from the Better Business Bureau of Central Ohio, or is that the Central Ohio Better Business Bureau?
Actually, it's the Better Business Bureau serving Central Ohio.
There we go. Okay.
Right.
So Dean is joining us today, and Dean is one of my favorite people for a lot of reasons, but particularly because he is at the other end of my keyboard and the other end of my phone line to get me out of trouble. He has done a great job of keeping us in line and utilizing the resources of the Better Business Bureau. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. It's always a challenge to keep you
out of trouble
and headed in the right direction.
I'm sure I couldn't pay you enough, but we decided, since he is always doing favors for us, that we would grill him today on our podcast. So anyway, so we've got actually several things that we wanted to shoot for today in our conversation. And we are really excited to have Dean with us. But there are several topics. Dean is the Director of Nonprofit and Charity Accreditation for the Central Ohio Better Business Bureau. And he is also a member of the Career Transition Institute and has been a supporter of Employment for Seniors. So we are taking advantage of his skill, his knowledge, his talent, expertise in a lot of different arenas today. And we hope to talk to him as a successful Encore careerist, as well as from a company that supports nonprofits, as well as looking at the issue of nonprofits as a potential employer. So we've got lots of things that we're going to talk about. But let's get started by asking Dean to give us a little bit of an overview on the position that he has with the Better Business Bureau.
Well, thank you, Carol. The Better Business Bureau has been serving nonprofit organizations for over 100 years. It's not a very well-known fact, but BBB and its local successor organizations have been accrediting charities since just shortly after 1900. And all of that accreditation has been in comparison with a set of standards. So it's not just a personal analysis of nonprofit organizations by some individual who has a certain passion for nonprofits, but an actual analysis of organizational behavior and structure based on 20 standards for charity accountability. Over the last 6 years, it's been my job and my pleasure to work for the BBB to help rebuild and reactivate a program that had been rather insignificant for a period of time, hadn't been given a lot of attention by the Better Business Bureau. They were focusing on expanding in the areas of accredited businesses. But through a couple of chance meetings and the outcomes of networking, which is a very important skill for people who are job searching, I came in contact with Kip Morse, the president and CEO of the Better Business Bureau here in Columbus, and we had a conversation, and he offered me a part-time opportunity to work with this nonprofit accreditation program to rebuild that model here in Central Ohio. So I now am responsible on a full-time basis for nearly 9,700 nonprofits in the Franklin County and surrounding county areas of Central Ohio, and across the footprint of our 21 county BBB office, an additional 14,000 nonprofits that the public is asking questions about and trying to gather information on how trustworthy they are, how transparent they are, how well governed they are as charitable organizations soliciting their donations.
And I can attest to, kicking and screaming towards accreditation, but through lots of conversations, Dean and I kind of finally figured out why this was important for them and for us and for you, our listeners, and for the general public. But just as an example, I had a question about a nonprofit on the East Coast that a young cousin of mine was involved in, and I didn't like what I saw, but couldn't quite tell what was going on. And Dean walked me through the steps of how I could look at this nonprofit. And so this could be information that you may need in your everyday life. You just never know. So it's great information. And thank you for helping us get our accreditation with the BBB. So
Right.
I was most proud that Employment for Seniors became a BBB accredited organization.
exactly. Me too.
Well, this is your Encore career at the BBB. You alluded a little bit in regards to kind of a couple of the steps you took to get to this position, but can you give us an overview of how, how you followed your career search that got you here?
Well, my career search began deep into my professional career. So I had already held a number of positions and had transferred from one organization to another several times in the progression of my career. When I came to an abrupt halt in that transition, and because my sons were electronically gifted, they helped me catch up to the 21st century and begin developing an internet persona, so to speak, with an email address and understanding how to navigate the internet. So that was my first introduction to, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now that I need to be searching for employment? I also learned very quickly that networking was a key factor in being able to move, transition, find a new position, be happy where I was headed. What was to actually enlist help from others and to be of help to others, helping make connections for people with other people that I was in connection with. It was the informal interview that I scheduled and held with Kip Morse at the Better Business Bureau that led to my opportunity that has since blossomed into a full-time position. He offered me a part-time position while I was looking for work at the professional level, at the executive level. And I thought that was a great idea, and my wife certainly agreed with that at that point.
Got you right out of the house, didn't she?
It sure did. And so an informational interview skill was really born, and I've been an advocate of that particular approach to gathering information, practicing in kind of a quasi-interview situation that's can be non-threatening because it's a casual conversation.
Right.
I also, with the help of my electronically gifted sons, developed a profile on LinkedIn, and with a person that is a friend of many nonprofits here in Central Ohio, Jeff Young, who became my guru in the area of electronic profiles. Jeff helped guide me in creating a LinkedIn profile that I think is exceptional, and also encouraged me to open up a profile on the Indeed website as well, which I strongly advocate to everybody who's looking for a position. You need to have profiles in both places, LinkedIn and Indeed, to be able to maximize your visibility and make yourself available to everybody. But it was the professional assistance that I got from Career Transition Institute and the job fair opportunities that I had access to through Employment for Seniors that really kind of capped off my job search success. And so I actually got recruited out of Central Ohio to a nonprofit organization in Indianapolis, where I worked for a residential care facility that was Medicare and Medicaid certified, secure locked facility for very troubled adolescents. But when that project came to a close, I found myself back in Columbus, back in the job search process, and once again relying on those same resources and skills and the community that I had built previously in my networking.
Right. So networking, informational interviews, that internet presence, LinkedIn, Indeed, and utilizing local agencies are huge steps that anybody can take in their career search.
Right.
And I love that you talked about the informational interviewing. When I was at Ohio State as a career advisor, we used to have students do that all the time, and the students loved it. With adults, it's really difficult, and everyone thinks that it's hard to do, when in actuality, it's the easiest kind of interviewing to do because you're pretty much driving the bus. Where a job interview, you're just a passenger hoping that the driver doesn't throw you off.
Exactly.
But you're driving the bus on informational interviews, and you can learn so much. It's amazing. So
it is a challenge oftentimes, and I found it as kind of a take a deep breath, chill out, this will work out just fine kind of experience for me when I began to have informational interviews with people who are much younger than me.
Oh, absolutely.
And here I am asking for information, advice, recommendations from someone half my age or even younger than some of my oldest children, which became a challenge for how do you engage in those conversations until you begin to realize that age really doesn't matter. It's a matter of developing a relationship.
Right.
It's not about age. It's about what kind of value does that person bring to this particular conversation.
Right, exactly. Plus, it's wonderful practice when you actually are in the middle of interviewing with a recruiter that looks like your granddaughter for a real job. So it's also good practice. That's wonderful. So one of the things that you and I talked about is that idea where many folks don't think of working for a nonprofit because they've been in private industry their whole lives, and that's just never been on their radar screen. Somewhat to government and to higher education or education in general, but nonprofits really just don't click, and it's almost like it's an unknown entity. So tell us a little bit about your journey and how this working in a nonprofit has just been a great utilization of your talent and resources.
Well, my wife and I are both from a very small town in northern Illinois. We are both first-generation college attenders. And my initial goal was to attend the University of Illinois, majoring in aeronautical engineering. And I was determined to work for Boeing.
There you go.
And move to the West Coast. Third year in, and a non-English speaking mathematics professor and I did not get along really well. And that was the end of my engineering career, as it were. I realized that I really was more of a people person than I was a numbers engineer type of person. So I transferred colleges and majors, stayed at the University of Illinois, but got involved in therapeutic recreation as a field of interest. And that really changed my whole perspective on the world, my life, my future. And I had to do 3 practicums in a very short period of time in order to catch up with my class as I transferred colleges. So I worked for a park district and really loved the opportunity to engage in a park district setting with services to children, services to families in the outdoors environment. And I thought, here's a career direction for me. And park districts, although they're quasi-governmental organizations, function very similarly to nonprofits. Mm-hmm. So I began to think in a nonprofit sort of way. The second practicum of the 3 that I had to undergo was at a Methodist children's home.
Oh my goodness.
And I was challenged by how to develop relationships with the children who were placed there and do my job to engage them in recreation activities that were appropriate, age appropriate, and enjoyable for them. And that really stuck with me. And that organization was purely philanthropic based. Charitable support was primarily what made it go and successful, and I really got the bug at that point. I learned how to operate within a nonprofit organization. I began to understand how it was structured. I was promoted several times through the organization as my college career ended, and I was available for full time. And that really kicked off my career in the nonprofit field as I made progressive transitions in job responsibility and accountabilities from Illinois to West Virginia to Nebraska and then here to Ohio.
Did you discover any barriers as an older applicant?
The biggest barrier that I found was my own mental barriers that I created for myself about how I would engage with younger people, particularly younger supervisors or managers. Again, it's something that I've forced myself to deal with, come to grips with, and I realized that my own children are now, my oldest children are in their middle 40s, and I realized that they're smart, they're skilled, they're experienced, and so why shouldn't a middle 40s or even a 30-year-old where I'm working not have the same competencies that my own children have and that I'm very proud of. So that helped me to mentally get past that particular barrier and figure out it's a matter of relationship and conversation and not just a matter of age and perspective. You sit across the table from somebody who looks so very young, and you realize that's how I felt this morning when I got out of bed before I had to stand up and make my knees work.
Exactly.
Sure.
Well, and it kind of goes back to the comment that you made early on, where when you're interviewing or talking to someone who's younger, to rethink what the purpose of the conversation is,
Right.
and that is to create a good win-win positive relationship with the individual you're talking with.
Right.
So there are barriers out there for older adults and and applicants, but as I always tell them, just kind of work around those barriers. If somebody wants to know how old you are, bring back all of your skills and talk about what you've done in the past that's going to bring value to that employer. So it really is a win-win, positive relationship. And when you're talking or going through the process of going for a job as an older adult, one of the volunteers always reminds me, you can't assume the person you're talking to, whether they're older or younger, is a good interviewer or is a good recruiter or knows what is coming to you with the notion of a positive relationship. They could be coming with their own set of biases.
Right.
And so you just need to work past all of your biases and their biases. So
Yep. That's the whole give and take relationship part.
Right. So one of the things that has always surprised me about older adults and in their job search, and it's my bias having come from the university for 3 decades of always having opportunities to learn. And many people didn't have those opportunities and didn't realize to take advantage of them. So if you think back on the different things you've done and the kinds of training you've had, the lifelong learning you've pursued, is there something in your background that has made a significant difference, in your career path? One of which could be the child who knows the internet and keyboarding and computers really well. But is there something that you've actually participated in that has been helpful?
Yes. In my career progression, I came to Ohio and landed in Dayton, where I was selected to serve as a president CEO of a national membership association of Methodist-related institutional ministries, healthcare, human service, community outreach, food shelters, programs of all kinds. They're spread all over the United States. There were approximately 600 member organizations in the association. And shortly after I arrived in that position, I realized that there was another skill set that I was missing in being able to develop this organization and move it to the next level.
Okay.
So I looked around and I discovered that there is an association of association executives, and it's called the American Society of Association Executives, and they have a certification program. I attended that program and became a certified association executive, and that really opened my eyes to how nonprofits have to focus on compliance, fundraising, and governance skills in order to set a baseline for successful operations. And I was in that position for 15 years. We did some really, really outstanding and successful things. But the most significant outcome for me was I gained a different perspective altogether on nonprofits, how high-quality nonprofits managed issues related to compliance, philanthropy, and accountability, particularly at the governance level. And that has a significant impact on me and my career, and has supported my work at the Better Business Bureau in an outstanding way, because I gained a lot of coaching and mentoring experience in that role, which I have been able to bring to my responsibilities at the Better Business Bureau, and help to build a process here in Central Ohio that is a mentor coaching opportunity for nonprofits to learn how best practice can be applied.
Right. That's a great example, because oftentimes individuals don't realize the value of their membership in a professional association could be. I mean, that's amazing. Thank you for that. Okay.
Well, it seems like you brought a lot of strong transferable skills to your current position at the BBB. Can you talk about how you evaluated your own skills and how you utilized that knowledge of your skills with discussions with your employers?
Well, my engagement with Career Transition Institute played a big role in my ability to articulate who I am, what my skills are, and what my successes have been. The Career Transition Institute program puts high value on the identification of what they call STAR statements. And it's a fishing expedition in your memory to pull out what did you accomplish and then begin to refine what that accomplishment is with a set of measurable outcomes. Rather than just saying, hey, I'm really good at interpersonal relationships, it becomes a valuable focus of why are you good at those? Or how good are you at interpersonal relationships? What is your skill set in budget development? How can you refine a set of expense forms in a way that will help streamline reporting for board members to know where your dollars are going? And over a series of exercises, I learned that I had skills that transferred very, very well to the business side of the world and not just the charity side of the world, by changing some of the terminologies of how I defined my outcomes. So instead of just being able to say, well, we grew the program at this particular human service organization in West Virginia, I could say I developed new programs, new services, and not only did we develop and expand programs, but we created new lines of revenue, new streams of revenue, new cash flow, above and beyond what existed before. And our return on the investment of creating that new program generated X numbers of net dollars to the bottom line. And as I began to realize that I was a good program developer, I was good at expanding revenue opportunities for nonprofits, and I was good at the philanthropy side of making charitable requests, commonly referred to as the ask. So I began to identify those kind of skills, and that helped me immensely in my confidence and my ability to articulate back to whoever the interviewer might be what skills I could bring, and to be able to validate and verify those skills in my LinkedIn profile, my Indeed profile, my resume, whatever document I was putting down in front of them, or the application form that they'd asked me to fill out.
We've often told clients that when they are looking at themselves as a job seeker, they have had literally decades of great experience. They've been powerful, successful workers for a long time. And because they have suddenly become 50 or 55 or 60 or 60, whatever, they didn't lose that. They still have all of that power behind them. And as you said, sometimes it's a fishing expedition in your brain to try to remember all of those successes. So as I was hearing you talk and looking at my next question, it hit me. I was in higher education and state government for over 30 years and took over a nonprofit. And gosh, that's a change in career area. And what would be something that I thought of that has helped me become successful at Employment for Seniors? Because when I was looking at this job, I'm thinking of fundraising, which I had done at the university and my high school and my undergraduate degree college, and managing staff and clients and volunteers, which I had done at the university. But suddenly, working at a nonprofit is running a business.
Oh, definitely.
And I think that that's one thing that people don't realize, that when they're looking at a potential career change to go into a nonprofit, you're not just there to give stuff away. You are running a business. And right. So one of the things that I did as an example in my background is I was the president of my condominium association many years ago. So we had 250 units and $1 million budget. So I was running a business, and all the folks who lived there thought this was their social club, so big difference. So if you think back on those accomplishments that you had, can you think of one that really was helpful in getting your job at the BBB, or something that you could say has really helped you become successful there?
Well, quite specifically about my position at the Better Business Bureau. Before I was recruited to come to the position in Dayton, I had several years of experience as a peer reviewer in an accreditation program that was operated in this network of United Methodist-related healthcare organizations.
Interesting.
Okay. It was very small, focused approach, but it used a set of standards. It engaged trained and experienced peer reviewers to do on-site inspections and validation that whatever organization we were visiting actually met or complied with the standards that had been set by this network of Methodist-related organizations. During my informational interview with Kip Morse, I was there to find out what he knew. The purpose of the meeting was to find out what he knew about a particular charity in downtown Columbus that I was interested in submitting an application for. And over the course of a 15 or 20-minute conversation, he apologized that he didn't know anybody there. He had looked at their governing board and didn't recognize any of the names, and so he apologized that he couldn't make a direct introduction between me and anyone affiliated with that particular nonprofit organization. And so I was prepared to thank him for his time because I'd only asked for 30 minutes. And he said, wait, don't go away so soon. And he turned his monitor around, and there sat my LinkedIn profile on his screen. And he asked, what's this information on your LinkedIn profile about this accreditation program that you've been a peer reviewer for? Tell me about that. And it was that segment of the conversation that caused him to offer me the part-time opportunity to help bring this program back in-house and get it reorganized and create new traction for it here in the Columbus area. So it was something that I had done. It wasn't a major part of my responsibilities or job duties anywhere, but it was a point of interest that I had at one point in my career that showed up on my LinkedIn profile, which then ultimately led to my position in Dayton and the expansion of that program and my full responsibility for its operation as an accreditation program. So it was that kind of opportunity, if you want to call it that, the synergy between ideas, thoughts, and conversation and relationship that he felt comfortable with me and confident that I at least knew what I was talking about when I was mentioning accreditation, understood those concepts to say, hey, I could trust this guy with at least getting this program back up and running.
At least to take some of those initial steps. Whoever thought when you did that years ago that it would be to your advantage today, and that you'd remember you did it even more so.
Exactly.
Because I mean, all of us have done so much, we just don't even remember.
Right.
So, good.
Yeah.
Well, developing those STAR statements with the Career Transition Institute, I found that it really took a 2 to 3 week period to be going back over old resumes, old files, old letters, performance evaluations, prior jobs, to actually tweak my memory and say, oh yeah, we started this new program, we expanded it. It was the first in the state. It was the first opportunity for this organization to create new revenue in this direction. It was those kinds of revelations that took a lot of time and took some very focused attention to dredge up out of the back recesses somewhere to create this list. But once it was created, it really formed a basis for focusing my attention on sharing who I am and what value I can bring to an organization.
To those who have listened to many of our podcasts, I'm always saying, research, research, research. This is a great example of research that you can do that has nothing to do with the internet.
Exactly.
Open up all those old boxes that are stuck away in the basement.
There you go.
There you go. So,
Yeah. Well, we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that the BBB supports nonprofits in a variety of ways. Would you give our listeners an overview on the value of work done between the BBB and local charities?
That's one of the things that keeps me at the BBB and keeps me motivated with my job. And the work that I'm doing now is that it affords me the opportunity to coach and mentor nonprofit organizations, and in particular, nonprofit managers or executives, but most especially people who are members of governing boards, because they're the folks who don't get an opportunity necessarily to do the day-to-day things. They come in maybe once a month or once a quarter, receive a set of reports and updates, get very excited about something that they're personally interested in, or they wouldn't be seated on that board or continue to remain affiliated with the organization. But they don't have a clear understanding of what their full accountabilities are. Even a number of executives aren't fully aware of all of the accountabilities they must address as nonprofit organization administrators. So the first thing I mention to nonprofit execs is that is the respect they have to have for their governing board, that administrators come and go, but boards of directors are forever. And not that they can't be abolished and organizations can be dissolved, but as long as that organization is active, it's the governing board who's ultimately responsible and accountable for its outcomes and its success. The second is to remind everyone that if there's no margin, next year there'll be no mission. And that goes back to your point, Carol, that you mentioned earlier, that most folks don't stop to carefully think about the fact that successful nonprofits must operate like businesses and have a reserve at the end of the year to be able to underwrite the launch of operations in the next fiscal year, or to have a reserve fund set aside to back up operations when there's more expense than there happens to be revenue. So business has to continue, and if you don't have a margin at the end of the year, by the time the next year rolls around, you won't have a mission. But the biggest issue that for me in my coaching and mentoring is to remind nonprofits of the 3 C's, and that's compliance, compliance, compliance. And if you don't respond appropriately to the Secretary of State, to the Attorney General, to the Department of Taxation, and to the IRS, you're in deep water. And many times my colleague and I at the Better Business Bureau will call up an organization and just casually let them know that we've looked at their report on the Secretary of State's website, and their organization has been officially declared dead by the Secretary of State. Oh, by the way, were you aware that your organization is dead and you really need to fill out that form that you got about 6 months ago? So again, our work is trying to help bridge the compliance gap with nonprofits so that they can move forward in a successful way and meet our 20 standards for charitable accountability.
You know, Dean, I am fascinated by the changes in your career path. And I think we all have some interesting side steps we've taken. And they all come together. I think that's what's always amazing, is that they do come together. But if you had to give one of our listeners one piece of important advice in a career journey, what would it be?
It would be walk, don't run.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Take it slow. And the very first thing you should do if you're in a position where you need to, where you're planning to make a career move or a career transition has been imposed upon you for whatever reason, sit down and develop a plan before you react and respond. Make sure that you have all your ducks in a row, so to speak, that you've updated and enhanced everything that presents you to the electronic world these days, the digital world. Be careful what's posted on the internet about you. And always be careful that you take advantage of the opportunities that are put in front of you. Stay alert and aware of what's going on around you, and network.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Congratulations on your career change.
Thanks.
That fascinating journey, and the little pieces and bits of things that you don't realize are going to be important
Oh, absolutely.
are important.
Always. They show
Amazing.
back up.
Amazing.
Yes, even your president of your condominium association
Exactly.
plays a role.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so Dean, top 3 or 4 steps that you would suggest a career changer should think about and make in looking at a new path?
Well, the first step would be to do an assessment of yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, and your STAR statements.
And just let me intersect for those of you who have not dealt with being a STAR statement. Oftentimes, it's called an accomplishment statement. Same kind of thing.
Same thing. The second step would be to learn the best networking skills and become comfortable in presenting yourself to small groups and to individuals with a focused attention on who you are and what you're looking for. I meet so many people at networking events that can identify who they are, but they can't articulate what they're looking for or what they want. So that's an important part of networking, or you lose someone's attention and interested in any kind of follow-up.
But you're not giving them enough information that they can help you.
Right.
Because they're not going to make decisions for you.
Exactly. And the last thing would be to edit, update, or establish your social media presence in a most professional manner you can muster. That would include your LinkedIn profile, your Indeed profile, and a point that has served me well throughout my searches is that Facebook is strictly allocated for family and friends, and I don't tolerate goofing around on my Facebook account because I know it's every bit as public and available to recruiters as my LinkedIn and my Indeed profiles are.
Yes.
So have to be very careful about that.
And not only your own profile, but your steps that you're taking on social media. So if you start treating LinkedIn like Facebook,
Correct.
people are going to unfollow you, which I have done too many. So it's not, the social stuff is Facebook, but keep LinkedIn as the pure business
Right.
entity that it has been. So Dean, thank you. It was wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for coming to our office and taking some time with Brett and I today. We appreciate it. And I think this is going to be instrumental for a lot of folks to start thinking about what kind of changes they can make and what their accomplishments have been.
Very good. Well, please call me, call the Better Business Bureau if we can help with information about charities, information about making donations or charitable contributions, or information about job search. I'm happy to help whoever I can.
Thank you. That's a very nice offer. Thank you very much for doing that. So hopefully listeners are going to ask some questions.